Hello, agentpreneurs, and welcome to today's episode of the Daily List Report. Thank you for joining us. We're so happy to have you. We've got another great show for you today. We've got Kyle Handy joining us all the way from San Antonio, Texas. He's a team leader at eXp. Started his career in new home sales, been in general real estate for about 7 years. Super active online. So we're going to go through a couple of his sites right now. First one is kylehandy.com. You can definitely check that out. He's got lots of information, free guides, bunch of cool stuff there. He's also a fellow YouTuber, which is really great. Love meeting these YouTubers. This is a great community of people. We just had a great chat about that, in fact. So check out his channel. It's got real estate training there. Definitely subscribe. Make sure you click the little bell so you're notified of his new videos. Also on Instagram, he is Real Kyle Handy. So at Real Kyle Handy. Again, the link is below. Click on it. Follow him. He's got a really great following and some cool content. So he's got a great mixture of sort of his professional life, his personal life, and every successful person on Instagram that I've seen that's in this business does a nice job of blending all of that content together. And so he's just got a tremendous presence online. I can't wait for you all to meet him. So without further ado, Kyle, welcome to the show.
Awesome, Randy. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and super excited to be here and just kind of share some stuff with your audience.
Absolutely, absolutely. So first of all, we talked about this before, but I'm super jealous of your camera setup. So it makes mine look like I'm recording it on like a flip phone. But so thanks for that, Kyle.
No problem.
So Kyle, let's start here where I always start, which is why don't you take a moment and I want our audience to get a chance to get to know who Kyle is. You're a delightful guy. You're doing a great job in the business. So talk a little bit about yourself and have them get to know you.
Awesome. Yeah. So Randy, first and foremost, I'm a family man. I've, got my wife and my two kiddos, a 4 and a 6-year-old here. They keep me on my toes. My wife does homeschool. I work from home. And so, it's just one of those things. I love the freedom and flexibility that real estate has given to me. I've been in the business now for 12 years altogether. I got started in 2008. And straight out of college, I was about 22 years old and started in new home sales. Did that for about 5 years and, became a great salesperson, one of the top within my company. And but at the same time, I also kind of wanted a little bit more freedom and flexibility versus working, every single weekend, working till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, just sitting in the model home. And I, had been working with a lot of general real estate agents in new home sales, and I saw what they were doing. I was like, man, I can do that. I think I could give this thing a shot. And so in basically 2013, I went out, started in general real estate, opened up my own real estate brokerage. Whenever I do something, I kind of go all in, maybe a little too soon sometimes. And but I loved it. I kind of had the flexibility that I wanted. However, I will say, though, the hours did not cut back. As anybody who knows, just getting into general real estate, I was working 70 to 90 hours a week, and it was pretty crazy, especially when I started getting some agents joining me at the brokerage. But then shortly after about 4 years of having my brokerage, I had about 15 agents. I made the move over to eXp, and I've been here for about the last 3 years, 3.5 years now. Absolutely love it. I've grown a team nationwide. We got about 325 agents now in my total group, and that I get to work with on a daily basis. I still actively sell real estate here in San Antonio. So if you're watching this, you got any San Antonio referrals, definitely send them my way. I'd take great care of them. But I just absolutely love everything with the real estate business, what it's given to me and my family. So I just want to be able to give that back to other agents that are looking to kind of come up in the business and get a start.
I love that. That's a great introduction, Kyle. Thank you for that. Kyle, you said something there that I think is interesting. You said, you left new home sales and you just opened a brokerage, right? So you just sort of dove in, which, look, I'm an entrepreneur. It resonates with me, right? Like people ask me like, why, how'd you start your first company? I'm like, I just did it. Like, isn't that what you're supposed to do? And that was a long time ago now. But I had a guest on last week. His name is James Hoff. He's an agent local to me here in Southern California. And he had this sort of like metaphor, right? Where he had this video, actually, this YouTube video where he's early in the morning and he's standing out and it's really foggy outside, right? And he drew this parallel to like explorers, right? Like you set sail and it's foggy and you can't really see too far in front of you and you're just hoping you go in the right direction. So I want to ask you, when you left new home sales and you went in and you decided to start your own brokerage, like, was that the obvious next step for you? Did you wrestle over it? Like, talk a little bit about your mindset when you did that, because that's something that's really important to me in this show.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. It was probably, a little bit of me being naive, but it was also, I had a friend who was, in general estate. He had been in it for a little bit longer, probably about 2 or 3 years before I ended up getting into the business. And he started his own brokerage, and I kind of looked at what he had done. I picked his brain a lot about it and asked him, how hard it was to kind of get it going. I probably didn't ask the right questions because he was like, "Oh, it's super easy to set up. You go get an LLC. If you're already a broker, you get you can set this up pretty easy, like within a month, right? Have it all
Yeah.
going." But I didn't ask him like the right questions, which was like, "Well, how much work is it moving forward, right?" Like, and that was like the real thing. And so to set it up, it wasn't really very difficult. And at the time, I didn't know what I didn't know, so I was like, "Well, he's already doing it. I'll just jump into it and do it." I honestly hadn't even looked at like other brokerages, or like, I didn't go to Keller Williams or Remax, Coldwell Banker. Like, I didn't know what was out there other than, hey, I'm just going to go and start up my own brokerage. At the very worst, like, even if I don't get agents and I don't make money from that standpoint, right, I'm not going to pay anything in. But there was definitely some pitfalls to it that I started to realize, months and years into that decision. But overall, we all kind of get to where we're at, and it all happens for a reason. I'm super happy with my path and the way that, I've kind of, built my real estate business over time. Wouldn't change anything for the world now, but it's certainly something that if somebody's, considering doing it, I'd say, do some due diligence, a little bit more probably than what I did. Make sure somebody who has already done what you're thinking about doing, and really pick their brain and ask them some good questions.
It's really funny, Kyle, right? So when I think about what you just said, right? So there's this line, and I don't know where that line is, probably different for different people. But what you said to me right now is you just said, look, I was like, I'm going to leave this, I'm going to go start a brokerage. And you basically just I talked to one guy and then you started a brokerage. And that's sort of kind of how I've operated, of just like, I'm going to go start a company, and just go start a company. And sometimes I think back and I'm like, oh, I should have spoken to more people. I should have had more conversations. Maybe I should have had a different degree, whatever those things are. But then I realized that I talk to a lot of people, Kyle, who go out and they do a lot of that homework. They have a lot of those conversations, and they get into this point where they have so much input, so much data,
Mm-hmm.
that they just get paralyzed. This classic
Yep.
analysis paralysis, right? And
Yep.
they overthink it, and then they don't end up doing anything. So, like, I don't know the right answer for
Yeah.
anybody, right? But mine has always been kind of like yours, I think, which is you just sort of dive in. It doesn't mean you're
Yep.
reckless, right? And depending on the stage of life that you're at, and if you have a family to take care of, you have to consider all of those things. But
Yep.
you just sort of go for it, and it sounds like that's what you did.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, yeah, I've talked to agents all day, and even on like a different scale, right? Like, if we're not talking on the brokerage side, if we're just talking about like the agent side of things, and like we're looking at like lead generation, or like really kind of getting started with the business, it's kind of the same thing there. Like, you almost have to take that approach of like, yeah, you might not know what you don't know, but you'll never know everything. So you at some point just have to like pick a spot and just go, right? And like, you're gonna fail, gonna make mistakes. Like, trust me, I made plenty of mistakes, but never made anything that was, career ending. I never did anything like unethical or anything like that to where it would be like, bad for my business. Now, I made mistakes with like financial, right? Like things that I could have been more optimized on, or I could have, focused on differently.
But you figured
But
it out, right? You
yeah,
figured
but I
it out.
figured it out. And that's, yeah. And if I would have never done those, who knows where I'd still be. I could just be average old Kyle, and versus like trying to really build something amazing. And so I'm really happy that I took that path. I definitely encourage for the right people that are risk takers, they're entrepreneurs, they're willing to go out there and like you said, don't be reckless, but at the same time, take some chances.
When Kyle, let me ask you a follow up question then. When you made the switch, or as let's rewind now 7 years, 8 years, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think about your career? Like, what is it? Do you have a goal? What is it you want for yourself, for your family? Like, how do you think about your vision for your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that I've wanted most ever since I got into general real estate, like since transitioning my business over, is really just freedom, right? Like a time freedom, financial freedom, and I also want the freedom to pursue whatever it is that I want to pursue, like whatever it is that interests me, right? Like I'm not like, oh, I want to retire, at 35. Like I don't ever want to just not work, but I want to have the freedom to do what I want when I want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what, when I got into real estate, even, 7 years ago, that's what my mentality was. That's why I started going down the brokerage route. Cause I knew that I could sell homes and I could continue to earn just, commissions and do that type of thing. But I wanted to scale my business to where it wasn't just on my shoulders, right? I could basically leverage other people's time and energy along with my own and my skill set, but basically not have everything rest on my shoulders all the time. And so that's what, when I got started into the business of general real estate and having my own brokerage, that's what was going through my mind. And everything that I've done in those, last 7 years has gone towards that end, right? Like I've always tried to figure out a way that, it's not a one-way street where like I'm just trying to use, other people or anything like that, but I want to leverage everything that I've learned and gained over this period of time to share with other people, but then also benefit from it myself with being able to get more freedom and flexibility.
Absolutely. And isn't that one of the beauties of this industry that we're in, right? Is that it's so empowering and there really is no ceiling, right? You can be
Yeah.
you can earn a part-time income and you can be perfectly happy with that. You can manage a huge team, you can scale yourself, like all of those things are possibilities, which I think is one of the wonderful things about real estate.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing that I tell, people just getting into the business, agents just kind of getting started. I'm like, look, you never know what your path is going to be. Like if you would have told me, even just few years ago that I'd have a agents, hundreds and, now even thousands of agents that I kind of impact their lives, whether it's through my blog or through YouTube, or if they're on my personal team here at EXP, it's like, if you'd have ever told me that I could have that kind of reach and that impact, I would have thought you're crazy.
Yeah.
But it's amazing that when you're in this business of real estate, whatever you really want to pursue, whether it's maybe the investment side of it, whether it's the sales side of it, whether it's commercial, whether it's like we were talking about creating content, if you have a passion for something, you can tie it into real estate. Like real estate is so vital in a lot of people's lives. And it's such a big thing of, our economy and everything that I guarantee you, if you just kind of like start learning over your career, you'll start to find which way your natural like bend is, like which way you start to go. And if you're passionate about it and you like what you do, you'll become good at it. And you can be, like you said, the top of the field, right? And there's a lot of opportunity there. So,
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Oh, that's great. So Kyle, I'm going to bring up something really, I think it's very cool. It spoke to me, right? Which is kylehandy.com/income. And so I'm just scrolling through this page here for a second. And what you're doing here is you're being completely transparent about, your GCI, your team income, your other income sources, your expenses, your net income. And you have all of this laid out here from 2015 all the way up to 2020. And it speaks to me, and I want to make a point and have you react to this. So many unsuccessful people, or people that maybe I'll say are less successful than they could be, don't understand where value really is derived from. So they hold on to things. The classic example that I've given a bunch of times is, I'm a business owner, right? And you'll get introduced to somebody who's a consultant, and the consultant will come and they'll talk to you and they're like, oh, you should hire me. I have a great idea for what you should do for your business. And you're like, well, what's that idea? They're like, well, you have to hire me first. And I'm like, well, if that's the extent of your value, if that's where your value is anchored on an idea, then this isn't going to work out, right? And I see people make this mistake in other ways where they're like, oh, I would never show and be transparent about my income, and yet, people like you that I speak to are transparent about that. You're transparent with your time, right? You're giving of your time here. You're sharing your tips and your tricks, right? You understand where the value really lies. And so I'll just have you react to that and talk about your decision to publish, your income in that overview. I think that's tremendous.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, when I decided to release, the income report and kind of, start to do it, for the main purpose of me doing that was I realized, especially when I first started out in real estate, I had no clue like what somebody would make or what somebody would spend or what somebody should make or spend, right? Like in their real estate business. And so it was just so difficult to really know if like where I was as far as comparison to like an average agent, right? Like, and to know if I was doing good, if I was doing bad, like, what should my expenses be in comparison to my income, right? Like how much should I be spending in different aspects of my business? And I really didn't know that. I had read, of course, just like I'm sure most people have, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, Gary Keller. Love that book. And it gives you kind of an example of like, hey, this is what you should spend it on and that type of thing. But for me, I wanted it to be like, hey, this is exactly what I'm spending it on, for good or for bad, right? Like I don't make all the right decisions, but I'm just like any other agent. Like, I mean, I've shown income reports that are terrible. Like I lose money and whatever, right? But that's the real deal. And so I wanted it to be transparent, for my audience. And then what I didn't expect, and this is now what kind of I take the most from it, is the accountability that's held on me, because now I've got to produce these reports. And so literally, like, I'm looking at my P&L every single month, whereas, I used to not always be like that, right? Like I could go an entire 6 months or an entire year and never look at my P&L and never make adjustments into my business. But now, because I have an audience that holds me accountable, right? Like I want to provide to them and be consistent for them. It makes me go into my P&L every single month and make sure that like, hey, everything is tip top. And there's times that because of that, I've saved hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in my expenses, something that like was off, that I corrected it, in a timely manner, versus if I would have, not been checking things, it would have just, it been months of expenses without any kind of correction. So it's definitely been a good deal, both for the audience and for myself, I'd say.
That's a great answer, Kyle. You said something there that I think is of the utmost importance. And in fact, you say this on that page. You say, I hope that you can learn from my wins and losses. I've made plenty of both. Yep. This is the thing that I think successful people understand, is that mistakes are okay and that we're going to make them. And revealing and sharing those mistakes is also okay, right? I think that people who don't understand this have this naive perspective that you have to portray this image of perfection in everything that you do, and it's absolutely not correct, right? And here's a small stupid example of this, but sometimes when I'm making these videos and I make a mistake, I don't edit it out, right? I was doing this one and I dropped something and I was like, oh my gosh, I dropped something, right? But I kept it because there's a level, that's what really happened. There's this level or air of authenticity to it, which is we're not perfect. Nobody expects us to be perfect. And gosh, if so many people just don't get that point, Kyle, and I'm glad that you do and you put this forward. I think it's a great resource.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad you find it as valuable. But yeah, I mean, it's also, people have reached out to me because of the transparency, and they say, hey, I noticed you did this, why do you do that? Have you tried this? And they'll actually give me suggestions based on what I'm putting out. So, I mean, it's, it's kind of cool to be transparent, because especially it's almost like we're crowdsourcing this business, right? Like I'm actually getting help from other people as I'm trying to be a help to other people. And so it's like people that, there's always people that may know more than you, or that do know more than you. And when you put yourself out there and you really, be open and honest with everybody, people are going to learn from it, but you also can learn a lot of things as well. So.
Absolutely. I think that's great. One of the things that I saw on your YouTube channel, when you talk about, we'll switch topics here. Sorry, Kyle. When you talk about sort of lead generation, right, is this idea of focusing on a specific niche rather than sort of diversifying your lead sources and having them all over the place. So can you elaborate a bit on that? Talk a little bit about your perspective on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I really believe is that, too many agents, they try and do too many things, especially early on in their career and in their business, versus becoming like the master of something. Right. And that's not to say that down the road that you can't diversify and try another lead source, or, spend some effort or whatever into something else. But in the beginning, certainly, I think it's much better to pick one main lead source and go all in on that. And because I think the other thing too is we sell ourselves so short in thinking that we're doing everything we possibly can to extract as much, good juice out of whatever that lead source is, when realistically we're actually leaving a lot on the table. And so like, when it comes to, I'll use an example of like, let's say you're going to be the master of sphere of influence. You've lived in your area, you decide that's going to be your source. And most people think, okay, well, I've called, I've texted, I've emailed. All right, well, there's so many other ways that you can do things for that. You can, and when I say don't diversify, what I don't mean is like, well, that doesn't mean you can't run Facebook ads. Run Facebook ads and retarget your sphere of influence, but just make sure everything that you're doing is going towards benefiting that main lead source of yours. That doesn't mean you don't have to learn other skills and try other things, but make sure you're focused on that source. It's the same thing as like, if maybe you don't have a big sphere of influence and you're doing, for sale by owners or expireds, yeah, you definitely need to call them. But also, are you trying to, send, seller packages to their home? Are you going and, retargeting that audience online as well? Like, are you really maximizing your effort? Are you sending postcards to the same, areas and neighborhoods? Like, do multiple touches into that one source, like go all in. And then once it starts to really click and you start to really have some success with that one source, then it's not bad to have, I call it kind of like your research and development budget, where you take 10 or 15% of your time and of your efforts and start, dabbling in something else, but never lose sight of whatever it is that's paying your bills or that you're having the most success with early on, right? Always keep that focus on there until maybe something else starts really connecting. And then you can determine if you want to go ahead and split, 50-50 of your time or whatever. But what I see too often is agents that will be like, well, I watched this, YouTube video and it says I got to go do this. And then they listen to a podcast and they're like, well, and then this person's doing that. So then they try a little bit of that. But then nothing is really connecting. The agent is staying busy, so they're thinking that they're being productive, but really it's not, focused effort. And so it becomes a really tricky thing. So, I mean, agents can be busy all the time, but still not have success. But if you are solely focused on one thing and everything you're trying to learn, whether it's, you're watching YouTube videos, you're on podcasts, you're talking to other agents, and everything that you're trying to focus on is getting better at that one lead source, I promise you that in a couple months, few months, you're the expert of that source. You will be successful. There's not one right source that is, the right thing to do. But if you pick one and you become an expert at it, I promise you can make it work. Like, every source can be successful if you just give it the focus and the effort.
I think that's really good advice, Kyle. I think you're referencing what we all see, right? Which is a lot of agents dabble, and I think that there's this false sense of security in trying things, right? This, hey, I'm trying something, and there's not enough commitment to it, right? So, YouTube is a great example, right? I did a show talking about, look, if you're going to do YouTube or whatever you're going to do, you have to commit to some level of activity, right? You have to say, I'm going to do, a video a week for 52 weeks, whatever the thing is, right? You have to make a level of commitment to that, because without that, I think you're going to absolutely struggle. The other thing, Kyle, I'm curious to get your reaction to this, is I've talked to a number of agents who've said something along these lines. They said, as it relates to content or lead generation, whatever, right? They said, you have to find something that feels like you, that feels natural to who you are. So an example is one of the guys I talked to recently said, look, I know that door knocking works, but I'm just not comfortable door knocking, right? If I had to do it and I had to put food on the dinner table, I would do it, but it's just not who I am. And so I don't do door knocking, right? And so he found a channel or a platform that felt like him. So when we think about content creation, maybe Instagram is or isn't a good platform for you, or YouTube is or isn't, right? So how do you think about that facet of it, which is finding something that is sort of consistent with who you are and what you like?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's basically two avenues that you can take your business down, right? Like, you can take your business down, I'm going to be the ultimate prospector, right? And go the prospecting source, whether that's, your outbound calling, your door knocking, you're doing, even open houses, that type of thing, where you're out, you're like trying to get, one-on-one business. Or you can take your business kind of the attracting approach, right? Where you're going to attract business. And this is honestly like how I've approached my business, my, entire career is I never really like to be on phones, cold calling or even warm calling, right? Like leads that would register on my own site and give me their phone number. I still didn't really like to call them. I would do it, but it wasn't natural for me, right? So I did have to start building kind of my business the way that I liked, which, here's the thing I'll say about that is specific to content creation. Is like, if because I talk to agents all day and they're like, I don't like to be on the phone. Hey, that's fine. You can grow your business without having to prospect and call people on the phone. If you want to attract them, though, then what you do is you have to provide value out there to where people can find that value, whether it's through your YouTube channel, whether it's through blogging, whatever it is that you're going to provide value, whether it's social media, Facebook, Instagram, that type of thing. Whatever that is, you got to provide that value to them. Let them register or become part of your audience. And once you've built up enough trust with them, they will reach out to you. Like I've got a good friend. He's one of my agents on my team here in San Antonio. His name's Greg Foster. Real quick shout out to Greg Foster. He's got a YouTube channel. If you search, I think it's San Antonio Living, Greg Foster, something like that. Well, he started his channel like 5 months ago, and it's just specific to real estate sales here in San Antonio. He breaks down San Antonio into different markets. So like we've got, sub communities within the city, and he breaks down each one. And literally this guy, he's had his channel for 4 months. I just talked to him like last week. He said he had 8 buyers reps that he had signed in the month of September, and he's already closed 6 transactions from YouTube. And if you go look at his videos, I mean, he's got over like 1,000 views on each of his videos. I think he's only published like 12 or 13.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But he is providing so much value to his base, and they're contacting him. His only call to actions are in his descriptions, and he has his like phone number and his email, and they're reaching out. He's mostly getting a lot of out-of-state buyers that are reaching out to him because, if you go on YouTube and you're searching for San Antonio, most of the time, people living in San Antonio, they're not doing that. It's mostly out-of-state people that would go on YouTube and do that, but he is crushing it with it. And it's just it's the same approach that anybody can take, whether, if you're not comfortable being on video and you'd rather do a blog and type things up, you can do that, but you got to become the expert at it, right? You got to go and research. How do you do keyword research? How do you optimize your blog post? How do you build a website, right? Or how do you hire somebody that can build a website for you? What are these things that you got to do? And so you can build your business, whether you want to build it prospecting based or if you want to build it attraction based. You can do either one, but you got to realize, that there's advantages and disadvantages. If you say, hey, I don't want to make phone calls, well, then you got to get really comfortable creating content consistently and providing value out there to your ecosystem. And so, that's the one thing that I'll say as far as, social media goes, the difference there when I'll compare blogging and YouTubing to like just putting things on Facebook and Instagram. I think sometimes agents, feel like they're doing a lot more good work when they're on Facebook or Instagram and just making posts. The only thing I'll say to that though, is that if you're doing that, that's your only form. You're not blogging or YouTubing or making a podcast or something that's searchable. You got to consistently and constantly put out more information. Whereas if you're blogging or on YouTube, when you create a post, that could work for you for the next year to 2 years. Mm-hmm. So everything you're doing is stacking on top of each other. And that's where the real value of creating that content comes into place. And so again, that's where, at this point in my career now, I'm all in on the content side. I think that it's an amazing opportunity. I think it's well underutilized for real estate agents to really take advantage of in their local markets as far as being the expert. And I'm not just talking about going and like, interviewing your local restaurant owner or something like that. You definitely can do that. Those are value add, but literally just break down your different zip codes, your areas, your neighborhoods in your city. And I promise you, if you put that out there and you're helpful to people, it will start to pay in terms of people actually reaching out to you and contacting you.
Wow, that's great. Great answer. So a couple things. For Greg Foster, right? I interviewed a woman named Karen Carr. She's based in Savannah now. You know Karen?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And she has a very similar approach, right? To which she's like doing very like local content about coming to the area, and it works really well. But it reminded me of something else that I've heard countless times is I think a lot of people think like, oh my gosh, I have to have 100,000 subscribers on YouTube before this is going to matter. And it's not true, right? I mean, nope. I've spoken to people who have got their first lead with tens of subscribers, right? There's a level of authority, authenticity, right, that comes from this, that somebody sees it and they're like, oh, I already know I want to hire you, right? Because they feel like they know you. So you don't have to sort of be a quote unquote successful YouTuber to generate business from this. And, I just looked up Greg's channel. He just started in April of this year, right? So he hasn't been doing this very long at all. And if he's gotten 8 seller leads off of this thing, then, that's amazing.
Yeah, 8 buyer leads. He's getting mostly buyers, but he just signed 8 buyers reps.
They'll become sellers one day, right?
Yeah, he doesn't mess around. Like when he tells me that, like I believe him. Like he's not like because he's a successful agent even outside of YouTube. This was just something that he saw me kind of starting my channel. He's like, I want to do it, but I want to do it on the sales side because mine's kind of on the agent side of things and trying to provide value to agents. But he did it on the sales side, and I was like, well, it's probably going to take you about a year and a half to really get some traction. And he is like, I mean, 4 months, 5 months into this thing, he's already crushing it. And he's like, Kyle, like this is changing my business. And so it's pretty awesome.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, great. Gosh, Kyle, I think we covered a lot of ground today. It's already been 30 minutes, if you can believe it. So I think we'll wrap for today. But hey, Kyle, if you're down, I'd love to have you back on the show. We'll pick a great topic that you're passionate about, and we'd love to talk again.
I'd love to do that, Randy. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for your time today. Thanks for your transparency. I think you embody a lot of the things that we believe in here at ListReports, and I just couldn't be more grateful to have met you, and thank you again for taking the time.
Likewise, Randy. I'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
All right. Well, there you have it. That was awesome. I think we're cut from the same cloth. So I think a lot of the things that we talked about are things that I believe in very, very deeply. We believe in very deeply at this company. So again, all the links are posted below. Check out his website. Check out his income statement. I think that's really, really helpful. And I think it's something that, again, you should look at that. You should think about how you can come from a position of value. That's what underlies that, right? It's not about publishing your income, right? It's about this perspective that if you lead with value first, then you are going to win. Again, Instagram, and definitely follow him on YouTube. And hey, while you're here, consider subscribing to our channel and click the little bell to be notified. So until tomorrow, be safe, be healthy, be happy. We'll see you soon.